Zachor Sharasalacha Amalek, B'derech B'tzeischem Mitzrayim. Remember what Amalek did to you, I'm sorry, on your way going out of Mitzrayim. There is known the analysis of this in the Maimer, and the Rebbe quotes, it was in 70 years, meaning that this is a Maimer that was said 70 years prior to when the Rebbe said this Maimer in Tafshin Lamed Hey, in 1975. It was said 70 years earlier in Tafresh Samach Hey, which was 1905. With the Dvar Malchus Zachor, Tafresh Samach Hey, Nikvar Nitbas. It's in a Maimer called Zachor Shoscha Amalek that was already printed for the year Tafresh Samach Hey. The Tzarech Lav, we did understand, Mao Inyan Hazchira Zachor Gaim. What is the idea of remembering that the mitzvah it says in the Torah is to remember? The Lechura seemingly haloya ikir hu amechiam limchay zarei shamalek timcha goymer machiyem chagoymer. The primary thing is the eradicating. To eradicate the seed, the descendants of Amalek, you should eradicate. I surely will eradicate. If so, what's the idea of remembrance? In other words, we have a lot of mitzvahs in the Torah. The mitzvah in the Torah is to do the particular activity, not to remember to do the particular activity or to remember what happened and then do the particular activity. It's just do whatever you got to do. Another question, line 8, comes to also when you understand Omri, what he says, Asher Asa Lacham, that he did to you. He focuses on what the Amalek did to the Yidden. The Eine Masker Kvait Kainai doesn't mention at all the honor of his maker. He was blasphemous towards above. As it's known, as we know, that Amalek was about knowing his master and still intending to rebel against him. So, despite the fact that Amalek was attacking Hashem, all he mentions is what he did to you. Remember what Amalek did to you, and doesn't mention anything about Amalek's stand against Hashem. Also, we have to understand what is the exact expression. That the idea that Amalek did to you was on the way going out of Mitzrayim. And his doing it was when he met you on the way. In other words, what's the significance, the location, and what you were doing at the time? When we talk about different events that happen in Jewish history, it's not emphasized the location, the activity that the Eden were involved in at the moment. Here, all of a sudden, it's emphasized that you have to remember not just what he did to you, but where and what he did to you. That he did it to you on the way going out of Mitzrayim. What's the significance of that? Another thing we need to understand, that he attacked you, all those that were like hanging on, those that were like at the end, those were at the Zonov. So you can Pirush HaMedrash, like the Medrash explains, Shekoyal Elu Shahaya Ha'anon Polton. It's referring to those that the cloud of glory would not accept them, would not surround them, and therefore be a protection from the attack of Amalek. And the Medrash says this was people that were so the Anon could not contain them and expel them. And those were the people that Amalek could attack. The amount of people that the Anon, that the clouds of glory that surrounded the Eden had expelled were a minority of a minority. In other words, very, very few. So therefore, if you analyze it, the Lechura in a Masim Lamashikosav Tchila Zachar Shasalacha Amalek, seemingly this doesn't correspond to what he writes initially. Remember what Amalek did to you. It's not just a command to those that are they were behind you, outside of the camp, etc. El L'chol Yisrael, it was a command to all Klal Yisrael. How could it be when it's just that minority of a minority that the clouds of glory expelled? So he says in his base, line 21, first he has to explain the idea of the war of Amalek. Concerning this war, it says, it's a battle of Hashem in Amalek against Amalek from one generation to another generation. Meaning, always in every generation, the Milchemes Amalek, top of page Vav, has to be the avoida of the war against Amalek. That's why it says Medor Dor. And the manner how we have to do the avoida of the war against Amalek. So let's look in Torah, where Torah talks about the war against Amalek. Move and Maasipur the Milchemes Amalek, but Poyels understood from the story of the actual war against Amalek, the Purim, that's in the Torah reading. I'm sorry, not a Torah reading, the reading of, it's the reading of the Torah on Purim that we talk about the actual war against Amalek that speaks about in parts of Beshalach, the Parshas Zachor, B'Shabbos Shali, Lifnei Purim, the Torah reading of Parshas Zachor, the Shabbos prior to Purim, the name is Baruch Kula Yomin, that from Shabbos, all the days of the following week received their bracha. It's only the preparation and the empowerment, as opposed to the war and the eradication of Amalek in actuality is in Purim. That's why the Gemara says that we read Zachor, Parshas Zachor, the Shabbos before, Kedei La'akdumi Zechira Lemechia, that you have to preface the remembrance to the eradication. So before Purim, when Purim is the actual eradication of Haman, and therefore the seed of Amalek, so we preface it with the reading in the Torah of the command. But it's not just that the eradication of the Megillah, it's also the war against Amalek that's in Parshas Beshalach. And what does it say in that war on Parshas Beshalach that we read on Purim? So he says in line 6, Shabbat Domel Nemar, as an introduction to the war against Amalek, it says, Li Yeshua, it was said to Yeshua, Bechar Lonu Anoshim, choose for us men. Behind this means, though the war had to be specifically done by Yeshua. Shahaya Roish L'Koivshim, he was the head of, or the first of the conquerors, meaning when it came to conquer Eretz Yisrael, the first one in charge of the conquest of the actual land of Eretz Yisrael, that was Yeshua. And then after he passed away, and then when the Shvatim split up, it came to different Shvatim and so on. Mikol Makim, Amarloi Moshe, despite that, Moshe told him, Bechar Lonu Anoshim, choose for us men, Shetzrichim Liyos Anshe Moshe Dafke. Even though Yeshua was leading, he had to choose men of Moshe. It had to be choosing Moshe's people. And only then it's possible to be that what it says following the pasuk, go out and battle against Amalek. So even though Yeshua was the head of the conquerors, was the one that led this, still in all, it had to be Moshe's people. So why did it have to be Moshe's people if Yeshua was the one that was leading the attack in the war? The idea behind this is, like it's explained in the Maimer titled Zachor that we mentioned before from the year Tafresh Samachay, Amalek hu Amal Kuf. Amalek is a combination of the word Amal, which means toil, and Kuf. Hainu Amal de l'umazeh, the toil of the side of Klippa. Kuf signifies Klippa, like in other Amorim he explains, because Kikoif b'fnei Adam, The kuf is like a monkey that mimics a human being, meaning that klippa mimics and imitates kedusha. It's a zel umazel kedusha. And what's the amal of kuf? Shagam kishiyesh gilu yalakus. Even when there's a revelation of godliness, like yaniach sheyifa lamato, Amalek does not allow that this revelation of godliness should influence down here. This is a great toil. He puts in a lot of effort to conceal the godly revelation, the revelation, the light of the revelation of light. And not only does he do it to conceal, but there is a certain manner the way he does it. To such a degree, that in such a way that he raises himself up high. He is very forward and very chutzpahdik, with an irrational type of chutzpah. Chutzpah beloy tage. It's called a chutzpah without a crown. In other words, a crown justifies someone's arrogance to a certain degree, even though there's no reason, even when one wears a crown, to be arrogant. And that means any time when we have a particular reason, that's a real reason, we have some type of quality that because of that we are being arrogant, that's called, he has a crown, he has a reason for it. Of course, one's not supposed to be arrogant, even if there's a certain quality. But Amalek is chutzpah b'loy tag, is chutzpah without a crown, she'ein al zeh bir v'tam klal. There is no explanation and reason whatsoever. Da'af shekvar nich v'cholu, even though he was burnt, sh'mekol mok mareu misakish partzach l'nagid v'lilchem, that he still in all, he is stubborn to oppose and to go to battle. That's the idea of the famous mashal that we say, Ashekarcha baderech, that he jumped into the hot bath. That's the idea of kriris, the coldness, that the first person that jumps into that hot bath, he actually gets burnt. The same thing. There's no logic to someone wanting to get burnt, and still in all, Amalek did that. In such a way that he met you on the way. What is the way signified? Derech Havaya, the way of Hashem. Allah Nemar V'Shamru Derech Havaya Lasis Dakom Mishpat. Like it says by Avraham Avinu, that he knows that Avraham Avinu will command his children that they will observe the way of Hashem to do tzedakah and mishpat, tzedakah and justice. So he is attacking that way. He is ashakar chabaderech. He is opposing the way of Hashem. What is the counsel for this? The best way to deal with that type of toil is to counter it with a different type of toil. The Torah is the toil of Torah. Chazal state, in explaining what it says, that man was born to toil. It's talking about the toil of Torah. It's putting in lots of effort in Torah study. Maybe like the Maimer that Rebbe Rashab brings, what the Medrash says, I wrote you 2 remembrances in the Torah. Zachar Sharasa Chulu, remember what Hashem did. Remember what Amalek did. Top of page Zion. And you should surely erase the remembrance of Amalek. You should be cautious and careful to observe that. And if not, if you don't observe this, prepare yourself for the enslavement of Egypt. That it says over that in Egypt it is the enslavement involved mortar and bricks. So what does it have to do with the idea of Torah? Move on. From this understood, the counsel and advice for eradicating Amalek, for a person to subjugate himself and to enslave himself with the enslavement of the Torah, with putting in much effort. This is the counter to Mitzrayim, the chaymer and levanim of the Torah, the mortar and the bricks of the Torah, as it's known, b'chaymer do kal v'chaymer. When it talks about the word chaymer, that's talking about learning Torah with the kal v'chaymer. U'b'levanim, and the word levanim means dal libun hilchasachul. This means the clarification, whitening of the halacha. To be able to clarify, to whiten the halacha thoroughly, you need a lot of effort. Until the ruling of halacha will come out in a true form. So that's what it means, how we counter, because if we don't counter Amalek, so then we have the physical enslavement of Egypt. Instead, we have to replace that with the enslavement of Torah, with the toil of Torah. Ois Daled on page Zayin. The Indians are kosher gam and Moshe. This idea is connected also with Moshe, Knisker, Leilsif Beis, like was mentioned earlier. In Ois Beis, for the sake of the war against Amalek, we need specifically Moshe's people. And Torah says, Zichru Toiras Moshe Avdi. Again, the emphasis on the Zikorin. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant. Zichru Daike Ke Moshe Kosav Kan Zocher Gomer. Specifically, we're commanded to remember, just like it says over here, you should remember. That's the idea of memory. And it's known that Chassidus explains, the brain, the section of the brain that has to do with memory, is the section that has to do with the level of Chochmah. In the level of Chochmah, the idea of forgetfulness does not apply. There's no possibility of forgetfulness. Like the expression in davening, it says there's no forgetfulness before, meaning prior to, as we'll soon say, your throne of glory. What's the significance? Why does this indicate the idea of Chachma? That the level of forgetfulness only reaches to the throne of glory. Bechinas Bina, the level of Bina, because Bina is called the level of throne or seat, because we know that Bina is something that is where Chochmah settles into. It also has to do with the level of the world of Bria, as we know that Chochmah is Meir Atzilus and Bina is Meir Bria. The world of Bria is called the world of Kursaya, of Hashem's seat, Hashem's throne. So we say, Ein Shikha Lifnei Chisei Chivadecha, prior to, not in the simple sense, in the presence. The idea of Shikha only reaches to the level of Bina, the level of Kisei HaKavod, but not higher than the throne before and prior to your throne of glory. Like it's also explained in the Torah, the Maimer entitled, and you shall give honor to the face of a Zokin, that over there the Alter Rebbe speaks about the great quality of having words of Torah engraved in a person's memory. Through studying and learning letters of Torah by heart, and then the Torah is engraved in his memory. Then Hashem is resting everlastingly within him, even in time when he's involved in matters of the world. That's why it says Vadarta Pnei Zakin, that you need to give honor to someone, Zakin Zeshakana Chachma, because the Torah is always in him, because he has the Torah committed to memory. Not only is Hashem there when he's involved in matters of the world, when he's doing just non-holy matters, even during the sin, the Nefesh Elokis is still faithful to the Eibishter. That's what it says. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant. She'inya has a current idea of memory. Bechinas Moichin, the Abba, the idea of Moichin, of Chachma, who inyan shel Moshe. It's the idea of Moshe. So that's why we need to have the men of Moshe to conquer the opposite and the counter of memory that's to be found by Amalek. So he says on top page Ches, but still we need to understand the Zichru Toiras Moshe Avdi. The analysis of the expression, the pasuk, remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant. In addition to the fact that it's very unique that it's called Moshe Rabbeinu's Torah, and the Chazal explain why is it called Moshe Rabbeinu's Torah, because he gave up his life for Torah. Therefore, it's called his Torah. It's called Torah's Moshe. Yeshnam Gam Hadgosha, the Torah's Moshe Avdi. There's also the emphasis that it's Torah of Moshe, my servant. So the Rebbe is going to ask a very basic question. Torah and servitude do not go hand in hand. The Lechura, he says in line 5, the primary idea of Torah is understanding and comprehension. What is it? Why over here do we emphasize the idea that it's Moshe, my servant? You want to talk about Moshe being Hashem's servant? Fine. That's a wonderful quality. But when you're talking about Torah's understanding. Servitude is about Kabbalah, soil, bittul. It's not about understanding. How do these two things fit together? At most, if you want to talk about how awesome Moshe is in regards to Torah, there would be more place to emphasize the idea of the prophecy of Moshe. Like it says, Moshe Nevi, like it should have said, instead of Zichru Torah's Moshe Avdi, it should have said Moshe Nevi. Remember Moshe, the Torah of Moshe, my prophet. Like the Rambam speaks about at length. Moshe Rabbeinu loyim in Yisrael ne'oiseh that Moshe Rabbeinu, that the Yidden did not believe in him because of the signs that he did. How come they believed in Moshe Rabbeinu? Har Sinai. Because of the stand being by Har Sinai. Our eyes actually witnessed it and no one else, no foreigner. So that made us believe in Moshe Rabbeinu because we saw Hashem conversing with Moshe at Har Sinai. So to the pasuk says, face to face Hashem spoke to you. That the event at Har Sinai, that alone was the proof that the prophecy of Moshe is true, that has no doubt, nothing that can be missing. Like it says, behold, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm coming to you in the cloud, so that the nation should listen to you. When I'm speaking to you, they should hear you. And because of that, they will believe in you forever because they actually witnessed and saw my communicating to you. What's the emphasis? That it's the Torah of Moshe, my servant. It should have more emphasized the idea of the nevuah of Moshe. If anything, that's what should have been emphasized.